So welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about mining publicly accessible historical observations. This is just a fancy way of saying, if you're looking for data, and we did a presentation on this, I think about 2 months ago, where there's a lot of publicly accessible information. And in that presentation, I was more focused on the actual sources of the information and not so much on how to use them in a live interactive scenario. So tonight we're going to talk more about the tools and about how to use them and the sites so that people can go out there and start autonomously looking things up on their own. And we'll do some live examples. And in the live examples, since you don't have to learn any new vocabulary, we'll be primarily focusing on things here on Earth, but we'll not only cover the basic tools like the pan, tilt, zoom, where you're observing from, those kinds of things, but also some of the chronological filtering, which allows you to look at something and then move backwards in time to see what it used to look like. And you can step backwards incrementally. So you can actually see how things have changed over time. But as always, first we'll do the news. So I declared this to be clickbait on YouTube. There is this website, this YouTube site called Mars Mission 2021. It's a YouTube channel, which started out showing you pictures from Perseverance. Okay, fine. But apparently, since their focus was predominantly on Perseverance, they were starting to lose their followers and their likes and things like that, their money on YouTube, because everything was targeting on the James Webb Space Telescope, or the Webb, or JWST. So what they did was they created a whole series of new videos down here at the bottom, and they're now showing up in searches. 8 first images of space by NASA ESA James Webb Space Telescope. No, they're not. So all of these videos, 9 stunning images, 8 first images, 7 first images, 8 stunning images, 7 stunning images. All they are is a rehash of Hubble Space Telescope Wide Field Camera 3 color images. And then they badge it with a James Webb Space Telescope with a little model of JWST, and they're not really from the Webb because they're color pictures. The James Webb Space Telescope cannot capture in color. The closest it can get to color is somewhere in the mid-orange range. No greens, no blues, no violets. The imager can't do that. Of course, once the Webb is taking pictures of things like galaxies, they could use the Hubble palette and false color shift their images to look like as if they're taken with the Hubble. But the problem is the raw data will be in infrared or near infrared. So even if they colored it, the size of the galaxy, nebula, whatever, will be much larger than it would be in visual light. And what is bright within it will not be as bright, and the parts that are dimmer, the diffuse infrared clouds, will be brighter. So
well,
even
when you do that kind of data, you can extrapolate the data. So especially if you have spectroscopic data, you can color everything that has hydrogen in red. So you do like the same palette that you do for oxygen, hydrogen, and yes. Now I'm blank. Hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur. So you do that kind of filtering, and then you kind of do like a guesstimation what would be the color. It's possible.
Well, all you do is you take the energy levels of the pixels and you apply the Hubble palette to them, and then you have to do a histogram to rebalance the brightness. But if you have data from an optical image and you compare just the grayscale data to data taken in infrared, the data is different, because if you're looking in optical, you're not seeing infrared bits. So those pixels will be dark gray to black. But those same pixels will be much brighter if you're shooting them in infrared, and all of your greens, blues, and violets will be subdued. So not only do you have to shift the colors, you also have to adjust what's bright and what's dark. Otherwise, it becomes very obvious that the root image was infrared and not visual. So this is not the last time you'll see these sorts of things of people proclaiming James Webb data when it's not. So be on the lookout. It's kind of like,
Did you resist it to make a comment?
oh, I love to make a comment. Here, let me show you what happens when you try and make a comment.
Comments are turned off. Oh.
Yep. All
Yeah,
they
this
want
is
is all they
clickbait.
want is the clickbait. So you can
And
see
then
down
let
here,
me ask you
it says
something.
comments
It's a
are turned
computer
off.
voice? Is that a computer voice that explain things?
I don't know. Let's see.
Because sometimes like this is bots that automatically do whatever's kind of, trending.
I'm going to guess it was a bot, but let's find out. No, it's just text.
Oh, yeah, it's a bot.
It's a bot. There's not even any voice to it. But when you see comments are turned off, there's no way you can complain to the author that you're not really showing what you're saying you're showing. So what you do is you go into the dislike, and you can see this is dark. I already dislike this. If you know the YouTube algorithms, what they really want is lots of likes or not dislikes. But the moment you start injecting dislikes, the algorithm shifts this guy down. So
YouTube has stopped showing how many dislikes there are,
oh,
unfortunately.
no. They won't show dislikes to average users. But
Yes, that's
when
what
I go into manage our site, the Broward Astronomy site, I can see likes, dislikes, and views.
What's the name of the guy? Because I don't
Mars-
like this kind of
Mars
Mission
Mission 2021. Okay. So if you want to find out the actual status of the James Webb Space Telescope, you can go to blogs.nasa.gov/WEBB, and you can see that currently what they're doing is they're still bringing all 18 segments of the primary mirror into focus. And here's where they are at the moment, which is, well, they're kind of bringing them all together. There's a couple of them that are really off, and they're off
Totally
not
off.
only in angle, but also in distance. So they're off in focus.
Yeah.
You've got some of them that are actually creating multiple distortion effects. You can see the black banding in this one. We've got some of them that are the proverbial footballs. So if you have a reflector telescope and it's not collimated, you get these elongated blob things, so footballs. So they
At
said they
least
had
now, I think they're pointing to the same object. Like first light, they were even pointing like to different objects at the same time. But now I think
they're all pointing at the same star. The problem was that some of them were so far off that it looked like something different. And one of them was directly on it and in focus. So it just looked like a big white hexagon because it was directing so much light to the imager. But now what they're trying to do is, even though they're not all at the correct depth, they're trying to get them all to form a parabola. So they're all kind of tilting in their image. But you can see there's some of them, they still have to get the distance right on. They said 30 days, we'll give them some time. So in this week's rocket launches, we have Grumman, Northrop Grumman, who launched one of their Cygnus cargo ships from Wallops Island in Virginia. They used an Antares rocket and a Cygnus freighter, unmanned, uncrewed. And it's bringing over 8,300 pounds of stuff, supplies and research gear, nondescript, to the ISS. So I'm going to guess that Northrop Grumman is now doing all of these supply launches to the ISS, and SpaceX is doing all the human launches to the ISS. SpaceX has announced that they're going to be doing more private crew launches in 2022 and 2023. And they're actually going to be flying a capsule well into the radiation zones around Earth. And they're going to do that to make measurements of how human bodies are affected by that. But they're not long duration. So hopefully they won't suffer too badly from it. The cancer probabilities won't go up too much.
Are they offering seats in there?
No, they've already identified the 4-person crew for the next flight, and they've identified 2 of the crew that's going to be for the next several flights, and it's the same crew members. But they are spreading the difference because they have a SpaceX crew member that is the husband of a NASA wife that's a crew member, an astronaut for NASA. So people are moving back and forth. It's a little fluid between SpaceX crews and NASA crews. Because I know previously they took a NASA astronaut and brought her over to the SpaceX program. So on Monday, February 21st, SpaceX is going to attempt to launch another Falcon 9, carrying another 46 Starlink satellites. This was a planned launch. I don't think this is explicitly meant as a replacement for the 40 out of 48 that they did lose. I think that will have to be a follow-up scheduled booster. And for all those people that were overjoyed at the fact that a spent booster from SpaceX was going to collide with the far side of the moon because SpaceX had no control over their boosters and the damage that it does and all that nonsense. Turns out, oopsie, the thing that's going to crash in the moon is not actually a SpaceX booster. It's actually a booster from China that was used to boost one of their landing craft to the moon. So when you want to launch something to the moon, that third stage or the upper stage is going to be kind of left in lurch when the capsule wants to go into orbit or land on the moon. So it will go into a very elongated orbit between the moon and the Earth, eventually landing, hopefully, on the moon. And NASA did this with the Apollo upper stages. So for a long time now, we've been using the moon as our space junk graveyard. Just hasn't been a lot of advertisement, not a lot of publicity about it. But this particular booster is going to crash into the far side of the moon is from China, and it's as a result of a lunar mission that they had launched back in 2014. The stuff goes up there and it just hangs around, and unless it falls down into something, it just hangs around. So last week we were talking about coronal mass ejections and solar prominences and the ESA NASA Solar Orbiter spacecraft, which is different than the Parker probe, captured another solar prominence. Now, this is weird. This is the actual imager, and you can see here's the prominence here. I think this is something the media created just to make it look far more threatening than it is. Because if you look closely, you can see, well, here's the flare, and then here's a really close-up of it. It's big and it's bright and it's fast and okay.
No, the thing is that they impose the image of the sun on the top of the coronagraph, and then they're showing the movement for one satellite, probably mostly. Well, there are two. See, it's LASCO and SOHO. So one is showing the image of the sun in the same timing as the coronographic of SOHO. So you don't see actually the sun, you just see the CMS coming out. And then they impose most likely LASCO image of the sun and time the same way.
Yeah, the size of the Earth is it's probably a little smaller than this white dot right here. So if you're thinking, that's a huge amount of stuff coming out of the sun, actually it's bigger than you think because the Earth is about that size or smaller.
That was a biggie.
Yeah. Now, for those that don't understand solar prominences, anytime from Earth orbit, and these probes are in Sun Earth L1, so they're facing the sun. Anytime it sees a coronal mass ejection towards the spacecraft or on the limb of the sun out towards the side, those are guaranteed not to hit the Earth. It's the ones that occur on the backside that as it goes around and as we go around, they're more likely to hit the Earth. So it's basically when you can easily see them looking at the sun, they're unlikely to hit the Earth. It's the ones you can't see from this side that requires these solar orbiting probes to see it on the backside. Those are the ones we need to worry about. Because in space, everything's in motion. And I'm sure everybody already knew this, that Alcionis is the largest galaxy we've ever detected. It's 153 times the size of Milky Way galaxy. The length of the galaxy has been recently correlated in radio observing, because this is a radio galaxy, it's a quasar, but in radio observing, where they can see out further than the visual light, they've realized that this galaxy is a lot bigger than they thought it was. It's 16.3 million light years across. So it is enormous, but also it's 3 billion light years away. So the image that they show here is not the image of this galaxy. The image of this galaxy would be a small smudge because it's 3 billion light years away, and they're seeing it at its fullest size in radio.
How do they define its size? It's the
radio.
Planets that are on it, or
No. This
You
is a
define
galaxy.
the size by the distance. So you see the distance, and then you kind of see the small angle.
the size of
formula.
a galaxy? If
Yes.
you're going to use its radiation to decide its size,
Yes, you use the radiation, you use the distance, and you calculate the distance, and then you use the small angle formula to kind of
Right.
figure it out.
They're looking at the radio signal of the collection of all the stars in the galaxy, and they're using that to calculate an angular distance. And then from the known distance of the galaxy, that allows them to calculate the actual diameter of the galaxy in light years. You have to use candles, different kinds of candles, to discern how far away it is. And then based upon how far away it is, what kind of an imager or receiver you're using as to the pixel diameter, and then the amount of energy you're taking in, so you can see where the edge of it is.
well, the edge would not be the farthest stars that are on it.
No, because we can't detect those stars visually.
Yeah.
This thing is 3 billion light years away. Most of the light that we see from it has been deeply shifted to infrared.
And it's moving away.
Yes, so we look at it in the electromagnetic spectrum farther down than visible light. So we look at it in infrared, or even better in radio, because that's further down. Because
It's a good
shifted.
target for James Webb.
It would be, but I think it's going to turn out to be a bit small.
What is the constellation of this galaxy?
Lynx,
Okay.
it's in Lynx. But remember, the constellation is our flat sky view of things. What we think of as a constellation, like the 3 belt stars in Orion, they're nowhere near each other. They're just in the same angular part of the sky. They're actually hundreds of light years apart in depth.
Yeah, to see it in 3D, it's something to see. It
Yeah,
doesn't look like that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that in certain pieces of software, like in Starry Night. You can say, I want to see the constellation Orion from above it. And when you look at it from above it, there's no Orion there. It's just a bunch of stars. And when
Yeah.
you're looking at it from above, you not only see the stars that you expected to see, you're also seeing all the stars that are below it and all the stars that are above it. So it takes on a completely different view. I've also looked at what the Earth, what our solar system would look like from another star. It's, what name do you give it? And Earth is that way. That, what constellation is it? I don't know. What mythologies do you have on your planet? Because we can't even agree here on Earth, because if you look at Ursa Major, we think it's the Big Bear. But if you go over to India and you point at that part of the sky where Ursa Major is, they'll say it's the three judges. So the International Astronomical Union just has 88 generally agreed constellations. The constellations are just a fabrication. They're just asterisms, just bunches of stars. So Helen and I will be at Big Cypress at Sea Grape Drive on February 26th and on March 19th.
Anybody wants to follow us?
It's next week.
Yep. We'll be walking around in the dark trying not to bump into things. It will be a moonless night at that particular time during their session. So it's all a matter of, if it's a bit chilly that night, if the temperature starts to drop just before sunset and drops until about 10 p.m. before it stabilizes, it'll be an excellent night. Hoping for no rain and no clouds. But since
after 2 years of not seeing the sky, let's see if I can still see the Andromeda Galaxy without aid.
Well, I've got new glasses to try out.
Okay.
Yeah, and eyes that are different, because that's why I needed the new glasses. So we'll see. But I'm already working on all of the equipment bits and pieces to get things working again. Taking all my scopes that I haven't had operational for a few years now.
Oh yeah, I need to
trying to get
verify
them
and
working.
remember to bring everything, including the telescope, right, Monroe?
No, not the telescope, the tripod.
Oh, no.
Oh no, you're right. No, I had the tripod, not the telescope. So
Yeah.
I'll kind of make
you can tell the story because it's amusing.
So in December, we went back to Fern Forest Nature Center for the first time. Fern Forest is maybe 15 minutes tops from my house. And I threw everything in the car, got over there, went to set up, and something's missing. And I asked Helen to come over to the car. What's missing? And
I had a laugh attack.
She thinks for a second, then she goes, oh, the telescope. I said, yeah, I got to go home. I'll get the telescope and come back, watch the tripod.
I laughed until I cried.
Yeah. When you're not in the habit, when I, more than a decade ago, when I first started doing public outreach, I actually had a laminated checklist of the things I needed to remember to bring. And the second event I did, after I said, I no longer need this checklist, I forgot my battery. And that was back when you had the big ass, the lead acid batteries to power your telescope. Nowadays it's, lithium batteries, and they're so small, you just chuck it in with all the other stuff.
Monroe?
Yes.
So my daughter Emma is in AP Psychology, and I have some good news for you, because she talked about this very issue about things like forgetting telescopes this week. She told me it's okay for you to forget where you put the telescope. It's okay for you to forget the telescope. You're in trouble when you find that you put it in the refrigerator, and then when you take it out, you don't remember what it's for.
I will absolutely agree with that. As I was growing up, I had older family members, and a couple of them did go through some mental faculty issues. And I had an aunt on my father's side. So he was my uncle. He was married to her aunt. And she was notorious for cleaning things and putting them in the refrigerator with nothing in them. So more often than not, if you were looking for a dish, if it had been cleaned, it was probably in the refrigerator. So I understand that. But yes, the next step beyond there would be, okay, you went somewhere, you forgot something, you came back home, you remember where you put it in the refrigerator, but once you take it out of the refrigerator, why was I here? What did I need this for again? And what is it? Yes.
It's happening to me then,
Yes. Well,
all the time.
I also talked to a doctor once when my aunt was going through Alzheimer's, and I was very concerned about her because she was getting distressed by it. And he said, don't worry, by the time the disease runs its course, it will no longer be frightening to her because she won't comprehend the problem that she has. And sure enough, she didn't. So when people are being diagnosed with issues with their mental abilities, initially it's very scary, especially if you actually understand what's happening to you. But there'll come a time when all of a sudden all's right with the world. So yeah, I get that.
Was the telescope in the refrigerator?
No, it was
Not
not.
yet.
It was not.
Not
It was
yet.
exactly where I normally put the telescopes. I just forgot to pick it up and take it with me because there was stuff sitting on top of it. It was obscured.
And no checklist.
No checklist. And I will not do a checklist for the big Cypress events. I am re-drumming up my mental faculties to not forget it. And I have
Just
something
have to
new.
remember in case it gets cold to
I have
read it a
something
lot.
new. Check this puppy out.
I eliminated eyepiece. No camera.
Okay, this is a,
No, switch the presentation for you.
how's that?
Perfect.
Okay, so this is, it's not a USB camera. It's not an internet camera. It is a directly coupled camera, what they call a StScI interface camera. I don't know if you can see the little fingers on it.
Yeah, yeah.
At your face, it says the priority in the focuser. So you're gonna have to,
Well, you can't see them. They're too small for the
No,
pixel
too
resolution
small.
of the camera.
yes.
But anyway, there is about 20 little tiny etched fingers on the end of the connector.
If you put your hand like this, see, look, I
No, we
have
get the
this
idea. We see
file. You cover your face and yeah, a little bit farther away, almost there.
I mean, you can see the gold in the fingers. That's what's reflected.
Yes.
But the
Yeah.
actual pitch of the fingers is too small. So this ribbon cable connects to the camera, and the ribbon cable connects into a Raspberry Pi computer. It is a, you ready for this? 12 megapixel color camera.
Wow.
It has just under 2 micron pixels in it, and it can take exposures just shy of 300 seconds without me modifying software drivers or anything. So I will be just periodically snapping images through this to a Raspberry Pi that will then present them as web server pages that it will update about every 5 or 10 seconds.
This was like for you guys who didn't see it, we did a presentation in one of the events that went public for a school, and Monroe did that with the Wi-Fi. It was a success. The kids didn't even want to look through the telescope because they could have the pictures that were shown in the telescope in their phones. And all they do, like teenagers, they never come out of, near to their phones.
Good,
There you
yeah,
go.
there we go.
Now you can see
Yeah.
the chip inside. It's a big
Yes.
ass chip.
Is it safe to
That's
aim a light at
nice.
it?
Does it what?
Safe to aim that light at it?
Yes, because it's not turned on. It's not turned on electronically.
It doesn't hurt the chip.
No.
Okay.
So how much do you think I paid for the camera?
So let's see, celestial planetary cameras for around $200.
Okay, this is not a planetary camera. This would be the equivalent of an uncooled deep sky camera.
Okay.
1995.
With the ribbon cable, $50.
Oh, wow. Okay. And not comparable with lots of cameras that are very expensive because they are like what, 5 pixels the most expensive ones, and this is 12 pixels.
This is 12 megapixels. The typical one that you'd see for $700-800 is 8 megapixels.
That's
So
pretty
this
good. This is
is-
about the same size as a phone camera.
Yes, a contemporary phone camera. So that's what I'm going to try and integrate. Previously, I would use network, TCP/IP cameras, and I thought I'd go up a notch. So I'm
Nice.
going to try and I'll bring the 180 millimeter Maxutov Cassegrain for people to look through, and then I'll bring maybe the 400 millimeter Mac at f12 for the camera. Unfortunately, most of the brighter planets aren't available that night, so we will only be looking at deep sky objects.
Well, the Andromeda Galaxy is available.
That's a deep sky object. There's no planets. I mean, Uranus and Neptune are out there, but they're so small at this
So
point.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, even in a dark site like that, it wouldn't be worth it.
I'm curious if I can still see Uranus naked eye. Mostly like not.
You're getting at that delicate age. So next, coming up on the 5th of March, Helen will be doing an Earth timeline presentation. The idea is to get a NASA Night Sky Network content sourced presentation on our YouTube channel as one of the prerequisites for joining NASA Night Sky Network. So here are the requirements. Your club must have a minimum of 15 members. We're currently at 13. Getting a couple more is not a problem. Your club must be based in the US. We are. Approval of your club's officers. I will. Commit to using Night Sky Network resources for a minimum of 5 public astronomy. Yeah, we can do that. Your club should be at least 2 years old. Well, there's a problem. With a history of outreach in your community. Well, we've got a history of outreach in our community. In fact, of us doing it. So we are skilled.
Right now at this moment.
We're skilled at doing this. So once we get the membership correct, I'm thinking we'll go ahead and file for membership. And just say, although the organization is less than 2 years old, the people that are behind the organization have more than 10 years of experience with NASA Night Sky Network, and see what they say. So that will be on the 5th, and then on the 12th. So when I was doing the exoplanets and extraterrestrials kind of thing and the UAPs, there were a lot of people that were not familiar with the Fermi paradox, Drake's equation, Kessler syndrome, and the zoo hypothesis. So we'll do a separate session just to talk about those as human response to hurdles. So when we come up against things that are insurmountable, how do we respond? Well, if we don't immediately have a solution, we usually come up with a hypothesis or a mathematical thought experiment or a paradigm shift definition or something that will create a definition for the hurdle, for the boundary. They will either say, hurdle, there's no problem. All we have to do is just this, to create ourselves a laundry list or a checkoff list or a probabilities, terms, factors list to get past it. Or the other approach is we create this thing that's insurmountable. We'll never do that. Even though we have observational evidence that it's possible to conquer the hurdle, we'll still claim it to be an insurmountable hurdle. Not only will we say we can't do it, we'll say things like, I doubt we'll ever be able to do it. Or if we can't do it, then they can't do it either. So that's why we'll never talk to each other. And if we can't think of a way around it, then it's impossible. It's just human behavior. That way, when after, 20 years of trying it and not getting it, we can go, it's not our fault for failing. We knew it was impossible. And the same thing held true for going faster than the speed of sound until we did. And the same thing held true for how are we going to get a rocket that will go from one asteroid to the next? We're going to run out of fuel. Ion propulsion. Oh, that stuff will never work. Yeah, it did. But first we had to do a probe called Deep Space One to prove that ion propulsion actually works. And if you look closely on YouTube, there is a company out there called Undefined Technologies. That's a Southeast Florida-based company. They have a prototype, physical object demonstrating technology that is a battery-operated, 2-pound carrying aircraft. It'll only fly for about 15 minutes at a time. It moves through the air without any wings, propeller, rudder, ailerons. It does so using an electrostatic charge. It's essentially an ion engine performing in the Earth's atmosphere. The fuel is just electricity. The actual ionization is the ionization of air. So this is a fledgling company. And who is it that's funding such technology? Well, they don't really want to be known. So it's a one of these investor community companies where you can't find who's in the community. But they got $16 million in funding to go off and let's see where this goes. So this,
And it is going. It's very impressive.
Yeah, this presentation on March 12th, human response to hurdles, Fermi, Drake, Kessler, Zoo. Ought to be a lively conversation.
Okay. You know what? We should visit the place when they are manufacturing, just to see the thing. It's in Florida.
Southeast Florida. In fact, why don't I go take a look at it right now?
Just the name is very interesting. Undefined.
Undefined Technology, silent propulsion, minimal craft signature, zero carbon emissions.
Zero directly carbon emissions.
Yeah. And they've got all kinds of marketing stuff there. So why don't I go to the YouTube site where you can see the video? It's not actually totally silent. If you look in the history of UFO reports, you'll hear that there was no propeller noise, there was no jet noise. It sounded like static electricity, and that's what this thing sounds like.
Ionizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw the experiment with the aluminum paper, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And yet it flies.
Okay. This is the latest model. There's always multiple improving models. Yeah. Undefined Technologies. Ion Propulsion Drone Flight 2. No wings, no rudder, no jet engines, no propellers. That's it. Now, where did this come from? Well, the current model is from these guys, but who are they? Who is Undefined Technologies? There's one guy behind it. Notice, comments are turned off, but I like it. So maybe about 10 years ago, there was a thing called an ion lifter. Let's see, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. This is where they started. And you can tell it's old because it went into the old style SD video. It's not HD video.
And now to glue the legs in place. I use the 1-inch mark as a guide. I put the 1-inch mark at the bottom of the skirt, the sharp edge.
So the amount of lifting capability it has is nil. It can't even support its own batteries. So in the last 10 years, they've gone from, they can produce so little thrust that they can't even afford to put a battery on board the craft. They had hair fine wire. You can see the wire here. That's actually how it powered it. The battery was on the ground and the lifter would fly based upon the current running across this thin wire. Balsa wood, aluminum foil, and now they've got the technology to the point where they can put a battery on board the craft. It's completely disconnected, power sources on board, and it can fly for about 15 minutes, carrying about 2 pounds. I know we only saw a 30-second demo, but there's another one on here that's a much longer one. But that's how things start. And if you doubt that that's applicable to other things, I advise you to look at the history of the microwave oven, the photocopier, any of those sorts of things. They were enormous, expensive, unreliable things when they started. And it wasn't until they started putting efforts into making it faster, cheaper, carry more, do more. And now you have things like, well, a copier is just built into your multifunction printer. You don't go buy a separate copier anymore. So anyway, that's what we'll do in a couple of weeks is the concept of, if you think it's impossible, it may only be impossible for right now. And eventually, if you spend time coming up with the technology and then improving it, it's no longer impossible. So that's the news. Any questions or news items that I might have missed?
That Mars helicopter has been in the news like crazy the last couple of days.
I didn't see. Are you sure it's current stuff?
Oh yeah, they've been running it. Well, it's the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary. And so they've been showing it on TV with long segments.
Huh.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can find it.
CNN has it, MSNBC had it.
Yeah, but is it historical footage over the last year or is it new flights?
Well, I don't know. Partly it's history, but it's the latest and greatest information. They're repurposing that little helicopter to, pave the way for the rover.
Oh, they did that after they had their first 3 flights.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to see the flight log. I want to see news. Let's see news.
Yeah.
What's current?
It's on today. It was a whole
status updates. There we go. Status updates. Come on.
And they've got the rover itself on a several-month trip out somewhere to go to the place where it was supposed to land.
The other thing about it is that right now at this moment there are no flights because there is a huge storm on Mars and it's actually being filmed by all the satellites that orbit Mars, and they're putting all the stuff that still works on Mars in safe mode to save battery and stuff.
I think that was back in mid-January. I don't think that's the case anymore, but yeah.
No, there is right now.
A planet-wide storm. The last status update is January 19th. So all the stuff you're seeing in the news media is just the 1-year anniversary rehashes.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I didn't see it, because if stuff is more than 2 weeks old since it was announced or observed, then I'm less likely to put it out there because they're just, churning for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was flipping through the channels today and I find that Buck Rogers has gone to Saturn. It was on TV. It must have been real.
Oh, okay.
So the other thing that could be on the news that I saw is that there's some data coming from TESS, like some papers being written, and TESS is finding almost 100 quadruple star systems. So star systems that have more normally, like the average that we find is like 1 planet per stars, but now TESS is finding like almost 100 quadruple star systems.
Yeah. TESS, TESS, is
Yeah.
NASA's extra solar planet hunter. They learned a lot from the Kepler probe before they put out TESS. It's still detecting exoplanets the same way that Kepler did, but it's let's just say the filters have come off and they're looking to a broader scene, but it's still not everywhere in the sky. It's a still limited region of the sky because they're finding so many stars, and the majority of the stars, the vast majority of the stars, all have more than one planet. So it's kind of like, as TESS looks at things, there's more work to be done. And then you find these galaxies where, hey, that's a galaxy 155 times the size of the Milky Way. Does that mean there's 155 times the number of stars? And if each star had a planet, and if only 0.3% of them had, water, habitable Earth-like planets, then there's millions of Earth-like planets in that one galaxy. So
Yeah, so the other thing it was on YouTube, like it was a report from Perseverance. No, not Perseverance, the one that doesn't move. I forgot. The
Insight.
other one is Mars.
Insight,
Insight.
yeah,
So
Insight.
Insight, it's like in safe mode because it's solar, and it says, and that is like a video from Mars report that JPL does sometimes, and that one is like how spacecraft deals with storms. So it's very informative video that I post on my Facebook page.
Yeah, what they found out about Insight was Insight's not a rover. It can't like wiggle its solar panels to get the dirt off of them.
It's a lander.
So what it actually does is it takes its claw, grabs up some loose dirt, and then sort of does a running dump of the dirt across the solar array, which scoots off a lot of the dirt that was there. Otherwise, if they just let it collect, then Insight would be without battery power because its solar panels don't move. When you have a rover can, move around, go on a little hill and dump that off if it's solar powered. But what Perseverance and Curiosity do is they are thermoelectric isotope electric powered. So they're good for maybe 30 years. And they don't care if the sun comes out or not, or if it's cloudy for a year at a time, they can still function. Now they may want to stop while the wind is blowing the silt around, but they're okay. Their biggest concern is how do the batteries last when it gets really cold? Are the wheels eroding? Because in the case of Curiosity, the aluminum wheels are getting pretty rough. In the case of Perseverance, they redesigned them so they're less susceptible to wear.
Well, the other thing is that on yesterday, the 45 years ago, the shuttle Enterprise made its first captive initiative flight at the top of a 747. So,
Yep.
45 years ago, oh my goodness.
You were only 5 years old at the time.
Yes.
Yes, it's unfortunate that for the publicity of the shuttle program, they used Enterprise up early as far as the name goes. And the Enterprise never even saw a rocket launch. It was just stuck on the back of a 747.
So that's what I paid attention this week.
So this week's presentation is on mining publicly accessible historical observations, or if you have a question, a poser, and you want to look something up, be it celestial object or Earth-based object, we're going to explain the places you might go to look, and then how you would use the tools to find out what you're looking for, navigating your way around, so to speak. And we'll do a discussion first about the tools and how to use them, and then we'll get into the actual user interfaces. So we'll do some live examples towards the end. So if some of the stuff that you hear in this presentation sounds familiar, It's because a few months ago, I did present on data mining of Earth observations and space observations, but we didn't get into sort of live looking up things where I just showed some still images from where I was looking on websites and here's a screenshot of it kind of thing. But that doesn't really show off the power of these tools and these sites that we can go get data from. So we'll hopefully empower folks so that they can go off and do their own what if kinds of things. So if you're looking for information, you're not the only one that's curious. You're looking for information, be it about the Earth, the solar system, or deep sky observations. There's likely an information source out there on the internet that you have access to. Access is likely free because most of these things are paid for by your tax dollars, assuming you know how to find them and use them. There is no hacking. There's no firewalls violated, no backdoors used. About as close as we get is some sites will require an account to be established so that they can verify who you are and then keep track of where you went, what you looked for. And the best way to respond to that is, don't make up some ID, just let them know who you are because it's likely just using it for tracking purposes. And if you never do anything out of the ordinary, untoward, they probably don't care about you because you're just one of millions of people out there doing this. You can hide in the noise. So there's several means of accessing repositories, bulk stores of data. There are desktop applications. This is where you're running a piece of software on your computer that knows where to go look and find the data, and it presents it to you and allows you to filter it. It doesn't allow you to change it. It allows you to change how you see it. There are websites. You can go to a website and have the website look the stuff up for you, but those are slower than having a desktop application. And also when you're doing it that way, you have to put up with sharing the servers with a lot of people. Then there are mobile apps, stuff that runs on your phone. And this is where the companies want you to be because they want your eyeballs on the phone 24/7. But you've got a small display, it's cramped. If you're on battery power, you're gonna run out of battery and you might wanna do your analysis for a longer period of time. So you have to plug it into your charger. It's a big pain. The Achilles heel of mobile device apps, which people like myself that have written these things and understand them know, is when you're running an app on a device and you say, go look for this, it's going to go look for more than what you want. It's going to start by not filtering very much. It's going to grab a lot of data, and then everything else you ask for is going to be filtering the data you've already collected. This is why when you go to a web app, it runs at a certain speed, but it's kind of a constant speed because the only thing coming back to your browser interface is the results that the server side found. In the case of a mobile app, which is a piece of software running on your mobile device, it's going to go get more data than it needs, hold it all in memory, and then allow you to filter that down. Some web pages do this as well, where you say something like, hey, Amazon, go get me all the USB cables I can find. And then after you get that, that first selection takes a while to come back. But then after you say, show me them in price order, at the lowest price first. But when you do that, it takes the data it's already collected and sorts it locally on your computer. So it usually comes back pretty quickly with that. So just know that mobile apps, they're going to be internet intensive on raw data, and they're going to store it, which requires more memory on your mobile device, but they're going to be quick once they just have to do filtering. Whereas websites are a little slower, but they're going to be sharing, and the server side is going to be running scripts to do what you want it to do. The fastest way to do it is with with desktop applications. When you're looking for things on Earth, my favorite is Google Earth Pro, or I just call it GEP. It's a desktop application. It's not a website. It's not a mobile phone app. I have my little emoticon up here, my little smiley face, because this is what I like. It's available for Microsoft Windows 7 and later, and it'll work with DirectX 9 or later or OpenGL 1.4 later for those people that are into such things. So it will not work with OpenGL less than 1.4, which my laptop's like that, so I run it in DirectX. But it's available on Apple Macs, and also available on Linux. There's where you can download it. They used to charge like $1,000 a seat for Google Earth Pro, but they made all their money and the application's in place, so they don't charge a license fee for it anymore. You can set your observing location. Do you want to observe the Earth from the Earth? Do you want to observe Mars from Mars? So you can essentially position yourself over Mars and look at Mars, or over the moon and look at the moon. You can set your chronology. So you can say, I want to look at the moon, the earliest stuff you've got, and the images will all look like crap. Or I want to look at the latest stuff you've got, and you'll get the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it looks very good. So as you look back, you're also looking to older observations, older technology. And like any typical mapping application, you can sort of slide yourself around and you can zoom in and out, but you can also tilt. And you can, from your viewpoint, zoom up without actually moving. So you can change the magnification. So if you know the coordinates of some place, then you can create what is known as a push pin. It's like on a map, putting a push pin into the map. And if you don't know exactly where something is, but you have the geographic coordinates of it, you can actually just create the push pin and then manually enter the GPS coordinates, and it will take the push pin to that location. And then you can just say, let me see where the push pin is right now. And Google Earth will take you to there. So it's a fairly capable sort of system. And you can save the push pins for later use. And if you go on Wikipedia and you look up something, and that something that you look up has a location, you can probably click on a link on the Wikipedia page that will take you off to another Wikipedia page that gives you location information. And one of the links in that table is Google Earth with metadata. And you can click on that and it will download a very small it will download a very small script file called a KML, or a .kml file. This is what cartographers use to define things. And in there will be the name, the geographic location, the zoom level, all those sorts of things. And you can put that on your computer and then just launch it into Google Earth, and it'll take you right to it, and you'll now have a push pin defined based upon that KML file. So it's very powerful. And I have my sad-faced emoticon here. Google by default is now promoting their experimental web-based variant. If Google is developing a desktop application, they have an install base. In other words, all the people that downloaded the software and installed it on their computer. That's not the current trend. The current trend is cloud-based things. So what they're doing is they want to push out a web-based Google Earth, Google Web, or Earth Web, or whatever they want to call it. But think of it this way. If every time you want to move around on the display, instead of it using local data and just using all the processing of your local computer, it literally has to send your movements out to the web server, have it redraw the map, and then send you down the entire page of that map. Slow. But just be advised, if you say, hey, Google, I want a copy of Google Earth, they'll send you to this Google Web. And let's just say you're unlikely to be satisfied. But it does push pins. It saves them not on your computer, it saves them on its server under your account, like you have a Google account. And the piece of it that manages all these saved resources are the piece of software called Voyager. So I look to the day when Google says, we no longer do Google Earth, we now do Google Voyager. And your account will have the ability for you to store projects in it. And the projects will have filters and push pins and things like that on it. So this is the direction it's going. Not happy, but I understand their business. So NASA also has a lot of repositories you can look through. Their biggest one for Earth observations is called Earth Observatory. So you can go into Earth Observatory and say, when you want to look at something, how you want to look at it, based upon some program, some Earth observational program, what craft, what orbital craft took the pictures, and what instrument on the craft in case it has multiple of them. And then you might want to filter by wavelength. I want to see this part of the Amazon in infrared so I can tell where the green stuff is and where they recently scraped off all the green stuff for dirt so that they can do cattle or agriculture. So that's NASA Earth Observatory. But then there's a subset of that called night lights, or Earth at night, where instead of looking at the Earth in the daytime, you can look at the Earth at the nighttime. And in the last presentation on this, we did sort of look at a screenshot of where I found an errant light bulb in a South Florida Water Management District pump station and reported it and got them to change it. So if you're surveying for dark sites, this is a good site because it has current imagery as opposed to 20-year-old Italian light pollution survey images. But sometimes if you want access to things, you have to ask for the access to them. So you have to have a prerequisite registration of username, your login, a fairly secure password, and some of them even require two-party confirmation. So they'll send a code text to your mobile device. You've got to look it up, either use the link in the message or use the code number for the message to confirm it's really you, which I've always thought as, if I'm a thief and I stole your computer, odds are I'd probably try to steal your mobile phone too. So if they say, well, you're doing this from your desktop computer, let's make sure it's really you. We're going to send a text message to your mobile phone. And the thief would go, yeah, I got that too. So, I think eventually the internet's going to figure out that, two-party confirmations have a hole. Don't know what they're going to do about it, but it's a hole. For me, what it is a giant pain because my mobile phone may not be here at the computer. It may be in the back bedroom on the charger. And then when they send me the two-party confirmation, okay, let me stop what I'm doing, go get the phone, read the text off of it, confirm, now we're good to go.
Sometimes they send you an email. That makes it easy.
Yeah, other sites can send you the email too, but if I've got your laptop, I'm a thief and I took your laptop and I'm in your laptop trying to register for a new website or a bank account or whatever, odds are I can read your email too. So two-party confirmations have problems. I don't know what they're going to do about it, but years ago when they, when Intel said, why don't we give every one of our computer processor chips a world unique identifier so we'll always know exactly which piece of equipment it is, and then all you have to do is associate you as the owner with it. And once that's done, it's burned in and nobody will change it. And then somebody said, what if I want to give my computer to another family member? What if I want to sell my computer because I'm getting a newer one? That's a problem. And then other people said, well, now Intel will know who I am. Well, there's the fear of corporate America knowing who you are. So that didn't actually happen. But anyway, the information associated with your login is used for traceability. So they know it was you. It's officially you. Officially, yeah. It's officially you and where you went, and what you looked for, and what you downloaded, and because that's a congressional requirement if you're getting data that was produced by your tax dollars. So if you want to go look for something, here's kind of the approach of how to mine for it. First, identify what you're looking for. Is it something up in space? Is it something on the Earth? The second thing is try and find what program, instrument, spacecraft, whatever, captured that information. So that'll require some searching. Once you know what it is, find out where the information is stored. In the case of NASA, they do have a very small number, I think it's under 5 repositories that you need to go look through to find it. Once you've found the repository, you have to learn how to access it. So every one of these repositories is going to have a user interface where the way the tools work may be a little different, may look a little different, the graphics may be different, but the concepts of how the tools work is going to be pretty much the same. So you want to find out, well, what mission, what was the framework for which the data was collected? Was it government? Was it commercial? If it was government, which government? US, European Union, European Southern Observatory. So you have to narrow it down. Now, once you've narrowed it down and said, okay, I know it's US, I know it's NASA. Were we looking up or was something looking down? So is it, am I looking at Earth resources, or am I looking at things up in the sky, or am I looking at things on the Earth as viewed from the sky? So identify how the data came about. That tells you where it's going to be stored. And then it's well, what kind of light am I looking at? If I'm looking at imagery and not just like raw numbers, then was it visible light? Was it infrared? Was it radio, ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma ray? When you get into looking at things in deep space, there's a lot of high energy spacecraft that are looking in ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma ray. So they're going to look different. The data, they're going to try and make it where it's accessible on par. So if you go to one of these NASA sites that has all sorts of observations, including high energy ones, the way that you identify what you're looking for is by the wavelength of it. So if you say, hey, I'd like to look at a picture of Mars. Well, how do you want to look at the picture of Mars? Well, if you go to the NEDS website, the NASA JPL NEDS website, you're going to see a long list of observations. And then you're going to see the wavelength of the observations. So you need to kind of know, well, okay, it's over 1,000 nanometers, that's going to be infrared. And if it's more than that, it's going to be radio. As it gets shorter than 1,000, we start to get into visible light. As it gets into the low hundreds of nanometers, we start to get into ultraviolet. And as we get to less than a nanometer, we're talking about moving towards gamma. So that's how you know what you're looking for. And then, of course, when was it taken? So if you're looking for, let's say, a picture of the moon, if you want the latest and greatest, it's going to look good. If you say, I want to see what the moon looked like 20 years ago, it's not going to look as good. If you say, I want to look at it 50 years ago, it's really not going to look as good. But we've been doing these imaging and capture and storage and repositories since, let's say, the mid-1960s. So some of the stuff looks really good. Some of the stuff looks really bad. It's kind of like, how good was the picture you took on your very first digital camera compared to the phone you have now? That kind of thing. Oh, and if I didn't point this out earlier, the location of what is being observed. If you're on Earth and you want to observe something by its location, you've obviously got what nation it's in, what state, county, city, that kind of thing, down to subdivisions and neighborhoods. And but you also have the Global Navigation System, GNSS. But here in the US, we refer to it as GPS. But there are GNSS systems that work in other parts of the planet where GPS doesn't exist. So if you want, let's say, GNSS information in China, you're not going to look for GPS, you're going to look for Baidu, because that's the name of their program for doing global navigation. Okay, the concept of start with more to identify less. When you first start looking in a repository, you may not be aware of all the layers and filters and values for filters, and you may have to look things up. But if you just want to sort of broad stroke and look at it, you can start with whatever their default layers and filters are and see if that narrows things down. So if you're looking for a spot in Texas, normal map mode may be good for getting you from the width of the US down to the state of Texas, down to a certain part of Texas. But then you go, okay, turn on satellite imaging because I want to look for a thing on the ground. So you start with more data, looking at it with less detail, And then as you narrow down your view, you start turning on more filtering to get something more succinct, and just keep iterating that until you find what you're looking for. So as you go looking for something, you may find that the first application, the first repository you start looking in doesn't have quite what you want, or the data may be old, or it may not be presented the way you find most comfortable to look at it. So you're going to be switching from one application or one repository to another. And when you do that, some things may be the same, like pan and tilt and zoom. But if you say, here's the field of view, here's the amount of the Earth I was looking at, and now I've switched over to a different application, you want to get the same level of zoom between the two of them so you can look at, well, here's how it looked there, and it looks better over here. But once you get better over here, you may discard this one and just focus on the better data. And when you do that, you don't have to worry about making apples to apples comparisons anymore, unless you want to do something like, well, I'm going to look at this high resolution display. I can see where it is. I've got the location of it. Now I'm going to go back to the lesser stuff. I'm going to put a push pin in, so I have to know exactly where I'm putting the push pin. So when you do that, you want to get your scales, your points of reference, and your fields of view to be the same, so you know the size of what you're looking for. Sometimes they'll refer to this as the view pane or the viewport, and you want to save that. So once you get it exactly the way you want to see it, you want to save that view or that view pane. You might save it in a push pin, you might save it at the application level, but you've got what layers you want to see, what orientation you are. Is it north up? The tilt, are you looking straight down at something, or are you looking at an angle? The zoom, how much field are you looking at? And then the elevation. If you're in Google Earth, you can say, I want to look at this from 200,000 feet, and then you can zoom, or you can say, I want to look at this from 20,000 feet, and then zoom. So that's the elevation, and that gives you the ability to save all that information. So what are your anchors or your points of reference, or the information that would be in your push pins for your saved coordinate? In the case of space, you have spatial coordinates. And although there are extragalactic coordinate systems and galactic coordinate systems, typically for amateur astronomy, we use equatorial coordinates. So you have right ascension in hours, and you have declination in degrees. And in order for one application to compare it against another one, you have either Julian 2000 or you have now, because things move in space. But if you want to switch between applications, you get an RA and a deck, look it up in one application, and then when you want to switch to another one, if both of them were using J2000, they can find the same spot. But if you say, I want J now you have to get into when were you looking, what time, where were you looking from, because that's going to change what your RE and deck would be from now. And if you're using altitude azimuth, those are terrestrial coordinates. They are very much specific, not only to where you're looking, but at what time, what date you're looking from. If you're on the Earth, you have geographical or geodesic coordinates. Those are your GPS, your latitude, your longitude. If you're looking in maps at structured locations, then you obviously have a street address, U.S. Postal Service address, but internationally, there are agreements on how to organize things, streets and buildings and counties or zones, states, countries, all that kinds of things. When you get to county-specific property appraisers in the U.S., you also have a property identification number. So if you're looking for, let's say, a dark site, and you want to find out who owns that property before I illegally trespass on it, you can look up on the property appraiser site who owns it, and the way that you know that location is by its very long, with dashes and dots in it, property identification number. Some applications allow you to save the current view, and you can save the location you're viewing, or others, you can create push pins and save the view in the push pin. If you come across an application that does not allow you to save this information, the way I do it is I'll either fire up Notepad or WordPad, and I'll manually transcribe or copy paste the data into there. it's not that I can, launch my text document and have it go command the application. But if I need to get back and it doesn't support getting back, at least I have the data that I can get back on. So timelines, knowing when as well as where. So we already talked about GPS coordinates and right ascension and declination coordinates in the sky. When? So it's you need to identify a point in time and a time window or time range. So you're going to say something like, I want to see what it looks like now, which is the default, and then I want to go back over a range of 5 years, and then I want to step through and see every observation they made along the way, so you can see things changing over time. And if you grab those images, you can actually make a time lapse and then do a little video. But you don't have to get into that initially. You can just move a slider or adjust a time value to see it. There's something you should know about Google Earth Pro. It gets its mapping data for free. So its data is typically about 3 years old, unless there's something really new and current, in which case it will sort of tap the shoulder of a commercial image provider in the case of natural disasters or something significant taking place. Then Google will open the wallet, let the moths out, and spend some money to get current commercial imagery. But there's another place that typically by local legislation, they have to update their aerial imagery annually. That's Property Appraiser's Geographic Information System websites. So that's a good place to look if you say, gee, this Google Earth data looks a little old. Isn't there anything newer? Well, flip over to the county specific property appraisers site, and you can probably find stuff that's a year or less older. And also look for not just what you're looking at now, but changes in the past. And sometimes you can look at predictions of changes across the future. So it's not only the stake in the ground where you're looking, it's how it was and how it's going to be. So now we're going to do some real world examples. These are ones that I've done in the past, but where I would spend, 3 hours droning over something, we're going to go straight to some things, and the performance lag is going to be something that I can filter out during post-processing editing. But we're going to take a look at some stuff, and you'll see the power of what this is. Now, to avoid having to learn about celestial coordinate systems and things like that, these examples are going to be terrestrial. They're going to be on the ground, but they're going to be from satellite views of the ground. So how many people remember there was an earthquake in Japan in 2011? How many people remember a power plant named Fukushima? The actual name of the place is Fukushima Daiichi.
Oh, yes.
So let's say I was interested because Florida Power and Light is going to be making changes at their Southeast Florida nuclear power plant, which is powered by fission, and it's called Turkey Point. And let's take a look. So as you can see, I'm running the Google Earth app on my desktop. It's not actually a mobile app, and it's not a website. First thing it's going to do is come up and load my account history. So it'll pull some things I've stored. These are things that I stored locally, KML files locally on my computer. So it's got a lot of XML processing to do. And it'll take you to the location. And this is Fukushima Daiichi. I'm going to zoom up a bit here. This is, the push pin is just one spot in the area. What we want to look at is over here. So here is a gutted out building that was one of the storage wells, not a reactor. Here is one of the storage wells that didn't blow up. Here's the actual reactor that did blow up, and notice it's got this new covering over it.
Oh, yeah.
So things have occurred. But also notice that here's kind of a industrial storage building that's closer to the water line, and you can still see the moldy roof stains from when the water came in. So they haven't leveled everything, and they haven't restored everything, probably because it's very radioactive hot, courtesy of everything that's going on here. So if I hold down the left mouse and I drag it, that's a pan. That's panning around. If I hold down the, I think it's the control key. No, it's the alt key. Yeah, if I hold down the alt key, I can also do that from the keyboard. If I hold down the control key, I can rotate. So I pick whatever point I'm at in the center, and I can rotate. So if I don't want north up because the aspect ratio would be better, I can pick that. But if I want to just reset everything, I just hit the R key. And now north is at the top. But that doesn't look quite as impressive. So I'm going to, if I just re-click my push pin, it puts me right back at everything. And you can see a map scale down here. It's in meters, but I can go into tools, options. And you can see I've got my latitude and longitude set as degrees, minutes, seconds. And my units of measure, I can set it at feet and miles. Just do an apply, and magically all the numbers change. So you can also just double click or right mouse double click. But there's this little thing up here that looks like an analog watch with a green arrow around it. If I click on that, it puts this little gauge up here in the corner, and I can scroll on there. So if I look closely, it'll say 3/20/20. So this particular image was from March of 2020. If I click on this end, notice it goes back to 1985. So that's the oldest imagery they have. And if you see these little white lines in the bar, that's where the actual observations are that they have stored. The blue space between it is, those are gaps. Like we've got no new data here, no new data here. But you see how they get densely together right there? So if I click right there, and there you go. Remember the covering over this guy that you saw, that sort of round cover in the cover here? That's because it was covering a building that had been blown up. So that was hot, radioactive hot. This one stayed intact. This one survived. This one didn't, but it was just a storage pool. So that one, they've done nothing with it because there's no potential meltdown there, but there is a potential for meltdown here. So that was if I just wanted to look there. But now that we know that April of 2011 was pretty much after effects, what was going on elsewhere? So how do we correlate this data? If I say Turkey Point, so here I've saved the image of Turkey Point that I had. And if I zoom up on it, there's this lovely nondescript, very flat roofed, looks like it was just built kind of building. That was meant to process the spent nuclear rods from Turkey Point. If I go back, there's no building there. So in 94, there was no building there. But if I go up to the next level, now there's a building there. But if I keep stepping forward from 1999, see this right here? These are specialized cooling pits for these spent nuclear rods. So here's the 2 reactors. And when their uranium rods start to get a little weak, don't put out all the energy they want to, they would drop them in these water baths. And they're just open top water baths. But that's no good. And when did they learn that was no good? After the disaster in Japan. See all this open area up here? Let's scroll forward. See what goes there. Look, there's construction starting over here. What are they doing? What is Florida Power and Light doing here? It's now even cleaner. The imagery is not always exceptional because sometimes there's clouds in South Florida. You can start to see there's little round things starting to appear here. I can zoom in and it'll remember my zoom level as I switch time. Well, they changed what was going on over there. Curious stuff starts happening in 2011. Notice the imaging getting better as the satellites get better. Look, all of a sudden it's all cleared off.
Hmm.
Now we're in 2010. There's a large open space there. Now we're at 2011. This is March of 2011, shortly after Fukushima happened. They've got a control gate here. So there's a security guard here that will stop you from getting into this area. They have this little storage building here, and they have like kind of a business office processing building here. So what is it that FP&L did in response to what happened in Japan? Now we're in April. There's a cloud right over the area, unfortunately. Let's go further. 2013. Did you see what happened? These 2 pools are now dry. There's no water in them anymore. So what happened was they took the spent rods from here, they transported them up into this area, and they did reprocessing to put them on what they call casks, those giant cement containers that hold spent radioactive material, and then they drive them off site through South Florida to the desert southwest of the US in a place called Yucca Flats. So when Florida Power and Light saw how dangerous it was to presume that the water would always be there to keep the rods cool, they turned to and spent whatever amount of money it cost to get these pools cleaned up, and they're no longer using them. And they now have a processing facility for any casks that they need to load up with spent rods and then send them off site. Imaging is getting better. And then we have a bad day of imaging. Thought I had an image here. I guess not.
Do they have three-eyed
Oh, there it is. There it is.
fish?
Look, check this out. You can actually see the trailer beds for the casks. So here's some casks. Here's the trailer beds. They're going to load the casks, which have spent radioactive rods in them, into the trailers. And you won't even be able to see what they are going down the road. They're not even like full-size flatbeds. They're just extended kind of delivery truck looking things. And they'll have these cement casks on board.
And look where the pools were supposed to be. It's all
They
flat
filled
thing.
in the pools and it's now paved. It's now like asphalt. What pools? We never had any pools there. So this is how you can just waste hours and hours of time going, well, that looks suspicious. What did that look like 2 years ago?
Do you have any place where you show glaciers being lost or some place being, submerged?
Well, I don't, but you can do that. Let's pick something here. Let me bring up a browser. Now, if we know that climate change is raising ocean levels, where is a place that maybe you've heard about being affected by ocean level? Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is in Southeast Asia. It's right near Myanmar, which is formerly known as Burma, and there's Nepal. So this would be India over here. So why don't we look for that? I'm going to leave that. Just keep double clicking until you get like the world. Wait a minute, Florida's crooked. How do we fix that? R. You can see I was going to Orlando soon. Okay, let's go over to this side of the earth. I'm panning my globe. And as I do that, it doesn't care which way north is. I can hit R and reorient things. So the little yellow lines, those are nations. So I have Bangladesh here. And you can see the delta. So let's pick a city like here that's right on the delta. If you've ever seen harbors in Nova Scotia in the US, they're very gently sloping out to the water line. So as the low tide and the high tide change, even though they're only changing by a few feet vertically, they change by a very long distance horizontally. Same thing is here. These are deltas into the ocean. So they're going to be very sensitive to a small change in the elevation, in the water level. So here is a city. No real harbor, it's just a coastline. We're looking at the data from 2021. Here's a bar right here. Let's click on that. Here's 2007. How about that for you? So in 2007, the shoreline was that much farther out. And there were actually parts of the city that were on dry land. And there were even roads. You can see the roads here. And the beachfront was down here. So let's look at that again. So that's going from 2007 to 2020. So you can see the difference here in the shoreline. Now, how do we record that? If we take a push pin we put a push pin and say,
Shoreline 2021.
12/2020.
Oh, 22. Yeah.
So Bangladesh shoreline 12/2020. Let's go back to that earlier date. See there?
Oh, wow.
That's actual land lost to the ocean since 2007, so 13 years.
Not to mention the fresh water that you lost, because
Right.
the higher you go, you lose the wells and you
Right.
lose fresh water.
So how do we know how much that is? Because I can do this. Remember these little things here? That's the shore. That's how they mark the shoreline for high tide and low tide. So if I put that right there, and I say, Bangladesh shoreline 11/2007. So I've now remembered my zoom level and I've remembered my viewing. So if I go here, I double click on that, right? It not only shows me my location and my zoom, it remembers when I was looking. So what is this loss? Let's just draw a little line here, and I can do things like, let's draw a line from this push pin to this push pin. How far is that? And I can change my units of measure to feet. So they lost 190 feet of shoreline.
Can you put this in metric? Can't think like that.
Are you sure you don't want it in smoots? I got smoots too, but I can select smoots.
I've never heard about.
Oh, you're obviously not a surveyor. Smoots are what surveyors use. 57.83 meters.
Okay. A length of a swimming pool, Olympic swimming pool.
Yeah. So that's the kind of things you can do. You don't have to ask a government to help you out with it. You can do it on your own. You don't need, people to assist you. It's just learning the tools. And how do you learn the tools? Trial and error. And always ask questions like, oh, I see that it's changed. How much did it change by? Can I do a ruler kind of thing? Can I draw a line? Well, you can also do other things. If you wanted, let's say, polygons are good. If I wanted to draw a polygon, I can actually draw an area, and then it will calculate the square area within the polygon. So if I'm looking at an area of land, how many acres is that? Well, if I do a dot off of the area, even though it's not uniform, it doesn't have to be a square or rectangle. It can be just an odd shape of points connected together to make a polygon, and then it will tell me what's the area of that? How many square miles is it? But I can also look up in other units of measure, square nautical miles, square meters, square kilometers. So for those people that believe climate change and sea level rise are bupkis, here's some just data. Look at the data. Now, if you think, well, that's probably just the difference between high tide and low tide.
Do you remember the name of any glacier that you visit so we can look? Okay, let me see a name of a glacier. Try BLAUEIS.
It's found something. And we've got data that goes all the way back to 1985. So the last data is 12 of 2020. Let's just take a jump back here and go to that one.
Okay.
That's 12 of 2000.
Try to get the first data, the very far away.
1985. Come on. It doesn't look like
Yep.
it's changed that much.
It's more like the volume on the place.
Yeah, let's try
Yeah,
Greenland.
that's not quite visible.
So you have to know a little bit about geography.
Yeah. Well, move away a little bit farther, and then we can see the whole area
No,
of
let's go
glaciers.
to,
And then you move around with the timeline.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Come on.
Eja Fliatle, you could. Okay, Greenland. That's a good one to look.
So what's a good glacier on Greenland?
Eja Fliatle, you could.
I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, let alone type it.
Katla.
Okay, so this will probably be good. So here's the southern tip of Greenland as of February of 22. Oh, look at all the data. There's lots of data points here.
And then it's very constant. Can you see? I think it's the same season, so you can see.
Yeah.
See
Let's
the
move it
month
backwards.
when you click. Try to get like about the same month or so.
Okay, December. It is. It's this.
Always in December.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can see it moving towards the west. Yeah, this whole area over here, you can see it icing up as we move back 2003.
I like the way they catalog the data, because then you can see the same month is comparable.
Yep.
Very smart. And that is no climate warming. Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
Apparently
Look at that.
93 to 94 was a big transition because not only do you have ice on the land, you also have the tributaries frozen in December. See, if the water's actually liquid, it'll be blue or light blue. As soon as you get the water frozen solid like ice, it gets this grayish color.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the oldest that they have. Look at this area right through here, and you can see how the actual tributaries are frozen solid. The water is frozen in them. So just look at this area right here. I'm going to take the slider and just smash it to the other end. Yeah, it's now open water, and there's not as much ice on the ground itself.
Huge difference.
Now, this is a large area. The scale is, this is about 37 miles square here, 37 by 37. That's miles of lost, square miles of lost ice.
I guess when we saw like the river stop freezing, there's
Mhm.
like the point of no return. This means that because now there is so much vegetation that's darker, that's absorbing even more energy and getting even hotter. So it gets like a synergic bump up, like a runaway effect.
Well, that's part of it, but it starts even earlier than that. If you,
Now,
if you,
one of
if-
the things that's very amusing, right there in that image, you have Greenland all frozen, and then you have Iceland that is green. It's like the one that is frozen, it's, you know, it's like the opposite.
yeah, yeah. The other thing is, if you look at maps and you look at what is known as a Mercator projection, that's your
Yes,
typical
I know, it's too
2D
stretched out.
rectangular map. Greenland is vertically stretched a lot. It makes Greenland look bigger than from Alaska down to the northern US, and it's not that big.
Yeah, it's just a
It's not
flat
tiny,
line.
but it's just nowhere near as stretched as you see here.
Hmm.
So enough of us looking at that sort of thing. What if we wanted to say, I want to look at some differences. I want to look at,
Home.
oh, let's pick something simple here.
Oh, interesting.
So this is the Orlando area. So what's new and different in the Orlando area that we're going to be interested in?
Oh, yes. We've been planning that trip for about
Orlando.
5 years.
So let's look at the Brightline Orlando station.
It's looking nice.
Oh yeah,
It's almost there.
yeah. I want to go out a little further here. There's another part of it that is interesting.
Oh, look how much construction the area.
Yeah. This is actually expansion of the airport. You can see the terminals. You can see here where they're going to have extra places for airplanes. So this is expansion of the airport, because the rest of the airport is, where's here.
Oh, okay.
So you can see Orlando Airport, and then there is a kind of a people mover train system that will take you to the Brightline station. The Brightline station is not only the Brightline station, it's also the rental car center complex, which is over here. So they're already using the tram from the main airport to here to get you to and from the rental car center. Okay, so this is 1221. It's just scrubbed ground, the new part of the airport. Now it's just dirt. This is 2018. So 4 years to build this.
Yeah.
But
We've
when did
been
they-
planning that trip for 4 years.
Yeah, but when did they build the Brightline station? They've already broken ground on it. So 2015, between 2015 and 2016 is when they broke ground on it. Now, if the roads get in the way, you can actually go in here and turn off the roads. That makes it easier to see things. You can see they started to build the terminal. And remember, it's not only Brightline's terminal, It's also car rental center. But the other thing you have to remember is it started out as Brightline, and then it became Virgin, and they backed out, and then it went back to Brightline. So you can see they're building out the car rental center. The building's done, but none of the connections to it are there yet. Now they've got the train station and the car rental center done. But over here on the left, they're expanding the airport. That's in 2018. Breaking ground for it. 2019. So in 1 year, that's a lot of progress. Must be a lot of money involved.
That
They're
we
building
are
out the
paying.
tarmacs. They're building out the tarmacs for the airplanes to drive on. And that's where they are at the moment. Okay, let's do a crossover here. Actually, it's better if I look for OneWeb. I like this one. So, look, there's that Everglades airfield that we always pass going to the Girl Scout camp, Nocatee.
Mhm.
We never went down this road. We always went down Flag Hole Road, which is over here. The airport road would take you to this spot. Who knew that hidden right near the Everglades airport, there was a satellite ground station that had some, not only a big dish, but a bunch of pretty sizable dishes. And that's been there for a while. How
And all
long?
of them are pointing to the same direction.
Yep. Well, they're pointing, some of them are pointing to the same satellite for redundancy. Others are for different satellites. We've got imagery that goes back to 1985. So in 1999, it was swampland.
Oranges.
2007, swampland, agriculture. 2014, okay, we've got our first satellite dish, 2014. 2017, still only one dish. Oh, look, 2019. So 2018, they went in and they put all these other dishes in 1 year. So if you think back to when the parent company of OneWeb wanted to build out their network, one satellite receiving station would not be sufficient because there'd be about 30 satellites moving over the whole Earth. Well, how many would be over South Florida at one time? I don't know, maybe 8, 10 of them. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got room for 10 satellites. So they could point simultaneously at 10 different satellites as part of the OneWeb network. So that's OneWeb's approach. Starlink took a different approach. Okay, so how did I know this was a Starlink station? Because if I go to the web, live Starlink, just another website. This is not even a SpaceX Starlink provided website. This is a third-party provided website. They gather data from SpaceX and they show you where all the Starlink satellites are at any point in time. And they also show you where the ground stations are. Well, it's taking forever.
By the way, did you get when you're gonna get your Starlink?
July of this year.
Oh, okay. Hopefully.
Maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go somewhere else here. No, this one. So this is the Broward County Property Appraiser's website. After I went to the Starlink site, if I went on Google Earth, I could find that there is a proposed SpaceX Starlink ground station in the Fort Lauderdale area. How about that? It's eventually going to be here. Well, what's here? I've got a road down here and a road up here. Okay, so that's Prospect Road, and that's 31st Avenue. And then we have 53rd Street right here, and there's where the SpaceX ground station is planned to be. They have to get that in before they can give me service. So if that's there, who owns those properties? So I'm going to go to the County Property Appraiser's website. I'm going to go to Maps and Aerials. Sometimes it'll say GIS, sometimes it'll say Maps, sometimes it'll say Maps and Aerials. And it shows you initially the whole county. But notice it shows you in the fastest way it can display it, which is just map mode. But if I kind of know, I'm looking for somewhere around in here. North of Oakland Park. Okay, there's Oakland Park Boulevard. There's Lockhart Stadium.
62.
So I want, that's the Turnpike. There's 95. There's Cypress Creek. There's commercial. So Prospect is somewhere in here. Nope, I take it back. North of it, Prospect is up here. So you can start to see, this is where I was talking about trying to compare apples to apples. If I'm looking in one application at map mode and another application I'm looking at an aerial, then I'm not comparing apples to apples. So let's go back to Google Earth. I can see right here. So the question I want to ask is, why would SpaceX want to put a satellite ground station on this property? Now the push pin is just generically where it is. So I'm going to go to the Property Appraiser's site. Here's 53rd. If I zoom up farther, I can start to see property. But that doesn't tell me enough. If I go up here where this little I is, identify parcel, click there, click here. Landmark Digital Infrastructure Operating Company. You know what that is? You can look them up. That's a company that does a lot of cloud servers. So if you want the fastest possible access to their cloud servers, what better way to do that than to have like this sort of greenfield area here, have a Starlink satellite station in it. So now all of the cloud servers that are in this building will have much faster access to the customers. Because if you're in Southeast Florida and you've got a home terminal for Starlink, it's your house, up to the satellite, down to this ground station, into the data center. You never had to hit the actual backbone of the internet. But if you did have to hit the backbone of the internet, how would you do that? Oh, I don't know. Let's go next door. Who is this? Oh, well,
CJ.
CJ Partners Florida LLC. Well, obviously, it's somebody who doesn't want to say who the business is. Who might the business be? Well, let me go back to Google Earth. If I go to Google Earth and I say, here's where that building is, and I zoom up to like right there, looks like there's a way to get in the parking lot. There's a neat feature in Google Earth. See the little person here? Street View. If I drag it to there, it takes me to, you can actually look and see what the place looks like. Oh, there's a gate there. So it's nondescript. It looks like a bunch of utility vans parked in the lot here. but it's closed off. I wonder who that is. I can rotate my view. I can say I'm going to rotate my view. There we go. Ooh, I can start to see whose trucks they are. Can't quite make it out.
AT&T?
Looks like an X.
I don't know. Let's find out a little further here. If I double click on the road, it will take me down the road, so to speak. Looks like there's another gate here. Looks like a bunch of trucks. This may be the back entrance. Why don't I go around the corner, because the building does go around the corner. Sometimes they'll put signage on the corner of a property. See, there's a sign right there, but I can't read it from my current angle. So I'm going to go around the corner a little bit. And I'm going to turn around and look back at it. Hey, it's the Death Star.
AT&T.
So this is the Fort Lauderdale switching center for AT&T.
So Starlink is going to be right there in front of the competition.
No. They're tying into it.
Oh, okay.
They're tying into it. Think of it this way. Come on. You can do it.
Monopoly much.
No. It's more insidious than that. It's not a monopoly. It's lots of companies together.
Cartel.
That's closer. So if I zoom out, so what I'm going to have here think of it this way. I've got a data center here that does a lot of cloud-based stuff, and it's a biggie too. Look at all the air conditioning units. Big data center. The big data center currently connects to the internet via AT&T fiber. So they are right next door to the main trunk lines of the fiber network from AT&T. And if you want to make that faster, you want a Starlink satellite terminal right here in this open field. Now you can get your customers via satellite quickly or over the fiber. So if this data center is accessed by other people on the internet, they'll be coming in through the fiber door, whereas SpaceX Starlink customers will be coming in by the satellite door into the same data center. So if you wanted to start a new company in the Fort Lauderdale area and it was cloud-based, this is the company you'd want to go talk to about setting up your cloud-based server.
And all those people will have to have lunch. You should open up an IHOP.
That's a good one too.
So I don't want to delete any points.
Now, how you see this is that AT&T is right there, but there is a name of a lawyer, kind of, like you cannot.
Because when you're a company the size of AT&T or Starlink or this data center, you don't have everything in your own name. What you do is you sublet things, you lease things, you rent them, because you're making so much money that if you outsource it to a company and you pay that company for it, it's kind of like laundering the money. You take in the massive revenue, you shove it through your service provider sets a cost for you, and you can write that off as an expense of doing business.
Hmm.
So have you ever been in an area where you go, why is there this little hotel there? So several years ago, out of nowhere, in this industrial park, Marriott built this discount hotel. It's called Town Place.
I've been there before.
Yeah. The purpose of it is for all of the big corporate entities that are in that industrial park, when they have people come in from out of town to do labor, to do work at those sites, they need a place to hold them up for however long they need to be there. So it's got to be an extended stay kind of place, but they don't want it to be too fancy. So it's not like a big Marriott or even a Courtyard. It's a town place. So big corporations will stratify their service offerings. So Town Place is extended stay, cheaper rooms. They'll have like a little kitchen in them, but there's no food nearby. You have to go to not fancy restaurants, but normal, drive-up places. So
There's a Pollo Tropical there.
what makes you think that?
I've been there.
Oh, really? Oh, here. Let's exit street mode and reorient ourselves. We're going to zoom out.
So you don't need to be a spy to be a spy.
I'm just looking at data that's publicly accessible for no cost. Yeah, I have to have a Google account, but okay. So there's that hotel. There's a 7-Eleven right across the street with gas pumps. So you can stay here for as long as your company wants to hold you hostage to work in this industrial complex. You've got a 7-Eleven for fast food and 24/7. You've got gas pumps. You've got a place to stay. It's got a pool. But if you just go down to the very next street, at the other end of the industrial complex, let's go back in our street mode again. Pollo Tropical.
Yeah.
So there's your well-cooked meal. Well, what else we got here? What other kinds of things would you want in the area?
Chipotle? If I'm not mistaken.
That would be too upscale. See, that's too upscale.
Be nice to have an escort service.
For what you're doing on your time off. We don't give you any time off. So if you're from someplace outside of South Florida and you want to have something to eat, but you don't want none of that Latin food. Oh, well, that's news. You ever see a Burger King go broke? Yeah.
McDonald's now.
No, it's actually for lease. That used to be a Burger King. Now, how can I prove that used to be a Burger King? I don't know. Let me go up to my chronological. See if it works on Street View.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think it works. I think it's slow.
There's no data.
Anyway. So now you see how you can all of a sudden spend hours just looking around until your better half comes over and goes, are you going to do anything today? Are you going to take the trash out? Are you going to mow the lawn? Okay. Which is how I can waste 5 hours at a time playing around in this stuff. I don't have anybody to stop me. So anyway,
So
that-
Adam, did you see that I kind of put a little bit of idea to put the, you know, a sneaky climate change in Monroe's presentation?
no, you mentioned this when we were having dinner on the 14th, and
Idea,
you know,
but my idea is to sneak climate change on it.
oh, I don't mind that. In fact, I would welcome that. So if when I'm doing these sorts of live demo things, if people have any other suggestions, you know, what if kinds of stuff, then I'm happy to oblige. So if you say, well, what else is Google Earth good for? I can do all sorts of stuff. I can make movies from those videos when I would flip between stuff.
Ever look
You know-
at North Korea and Area 51, things like that?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, also it could be cool to look for like places that they produce animals in large scale, like those areas where they keep the animals, and see how, you know, the treat from that kind of industry end up on the water we drink, something like that. We can see
What would be a good one of that?
chicken, like places that you have.
Chicken places.
Yeah,
And
it's like, I don't even know how you call it the name. The place where they raise like
well, what's a
or-
company? What's a
Tyson.
company?
Tyson?
mice. Yeah.
Tyson's a good one. Tyson Processing Plant. Tyson Processing Plant. Hey, Monroe, North Carolina.
Oh, it's your plant.
It's my fault. Yeah. So Tyson Processing Plant, Monroe, North Carolina. Here's an address for it. So if I just select that. Copy, then I go over to Google Earth. And I paste it. I got a digit off the zip code here. Let's take that out. Oh, now notice I didn't say, go to Tyson Foods Processing Plant. I just said, here's an address, go look it up.
Okay.
Now there's your Tyson Processing Plant.
Yeah, the processing plant will not raise the chickens. It will be more like killing them and freezing.
Yeah.
Move out a little bit and see if you can see like there is like places where they're raising.
Okay, the first thing you need to know about companies like Purdue and Tyson is they don't get their own hands dirty.
Sure.
There's lots of stories on the internet about what they do to farmers
Yes.
who want to be able to produce meat products for Tyson. So you're not going to actually see any, you know, husbandry, any animal processing of live animal here. This is all dead animal by the time it gets here. So if you're looking for things like lakes full of manure pollution or something like that, you won't find anywhere near here, because this is the end result. This is where they take the dead animals and they process them into something that goes in a package, be it a frozen food or a styrofoam dish that has, you know, chicken breasts in it covered in saran wrap. That's where this stuff occurs. And look closely and you'll see that, hey, it's multimodal, as in they've actually got their own train switching. So they move a lot of stuff through here. It's train cars, it's tractor trailer rigs, and then you've got a huge processing plant. And what does the processing plant need? It needs lots of chemicals for processing things. They have giant towers worth of chemicals. But that's normal stuff. That's what, if you're going to do industry on scale, this is very typical looking stuff.
Zoom out to see if you have any waterways or nearby.
Nope,
Well,
nothing
hidden.
attached to there. I'm going to guess it's in very rural land where nobody looks and land's cheap, labor's cheap.
Yeah, it's very hard to find.
Yeah. However, what would I look for? Pig
Yeah,
farm.
this is even
Pig
worse
farm.
for contamination.
AAA pig farms, Clewiston, Florida. There you go.
Ooh, okay, nearby.
So it's AAA pig farms. So if I just go to Google Earth, because you can look for businesses too, and I say AAA pig farms, Lewiston, Florida.
Henry.
Bingo. AAA pig farms.
Huh.
Well,
Are they outside in that farm? I see little dots everywhere.
no, I think this is bushes.
Oh, what
However,
about behind the where the,
hang on. You can always just, I don't know, zoom in.
oh, look the lake.
Yeah, those are just bushes.
Yeah, but up on top there was a big building.
And look at the color of the lake.
Yeah, but look at the color of the lake. Algae bloom. How do you get that deep in algae bloom? Pig manure. There's your pigs. See 'em right there?
You see a pig?
I see
Yeah.
lots of pigs. You have
At
to know
least
what
they're
you're looking
outside.
for. Hang on.
Are they
Where do
outside?
you-
There you go. See the pigs? You see
Them's
them?
pigs?
No, I don't think so. I think
Where are
it's
their
that
badges?
vegetation. I think
Those
it's
are
that
pigs and
vegetation.
they're out of focus.
No, I think it's that vegetation. Look at the
I think
size
you're
of the
dreaming.
building. Look at the
I think
size
you're
of the
dreaming.
building compared.
So
This
what's
is
what's the building going to show you?
They're inside. Probably
Nope.
inside of those. Oh, look in the back. Can you see the cover white there? That's where they are.
Huh? That's a
See if the
trailer.
little man.
That's a trailer.
No, the big one.
That's not
Yeah,
that big.
the other side. This one. Yeah.
That one? Yeah. That's
Yeah.
probably where they go at night.
No, there is no pig outside. I don't see them. They're inside of this thing.
This is offices. That's a double wide trailer. That's offices. That's not that big.
Oh, okay.
See here's a pickup truck. This is about as wide as the pickup truck and about as long as 4 pickup trucks. That's a double wide trailer office. I think this is your pigs right here.
No, I think this is that vegetation. Look, that is the same color inside the water. This,
What color do you think pigs are? Pink?
no, but this is big. Oh, look at the tiny white things over there. Oh, look at the color of that water.
So what size building would it take to process them?
I don't know.
Well, that's definitely green water. So they got to be somewhere nearby.
And it's like they are cycling the lakes, you see? Like some are dry, some
Yeah.
are used.
They're moving it from lake to lake to not make it too green. What's this? Right here, what's that structure?
Power?
Oh, they're growing something.
Hmm.
Almost looks like a vineyard. Yeah. I don't think that's related to the pig farm.
But the poop might be delicious there. Not easy to find, but we can see signals about. See, lakes, they're not contaminated, they're very dark.
Yep. That looks more like it.
Ooh. Yeah,
Yeah. There you go.
yeah.
And then you've got the lake right out back. Yeah, they've gone indoors. So they're probably learning from Tyson and Purdue. Don't make it where the satellites can see you.
Move along, move along.
Keep it all indoors. Yeah, but they can see an infrared, so they can tell you've got a large quantity of pigs there.
And
Anyway.
they keep the farmers in debt all the time because they want for them to change the amenities, so they keep the contract. And for them to keep the contract, they need to borrow money. And then as they borrow money, they change again the contract, change more, so it's very hard because they can never pay the debt. And it's basically like indenture.
Well, the other thing you need to realize is the company that the farm borrows the money from is not the local bank. It's a company that the meat processing company will send you off to get your money from. So you might find that Tyson Foods operates the bank that you go borrow your money from to pay for the improvements that Tyson is requiring. So you're indebted to them plus the interest, and you're also indebted to keep up with whatever they want you to do. It's a big racket. But vegans have their own racket for it, which is, oh, you want lots of broccoli? Well, we're going to have to clear off some land to grow broccoli cheaply.
Well, it would be 1% of the land occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to produce the feed to feed the animals. So it's the most inefficient way for you to eat, energy-wise.
Oh, yeah. So the easiest way for you to eat would be eating mushrooms. Because mushrooms don't need the daylight. You can stack them multiple stories, and you can have long-term harvests of them.
It's a big industry.
Mushrooms. Yes.
It's a big and delicious industry.
And it's gone further now. It's no longer just what you eat. The interior of the latest generation of Tesla Model S and Model X actually have fake leather made from mushroom fiber.
Yes.
So
packaging made of mushroom fiber.
yes.
Floors, all kinds of materials made of mushrooms.
Yep. You can actually go to flooring stores and buy mushroom sourced wood paneling for your floor and your walls.
And the other thing is that for you to feed the mushroom, the food is basically free because that's whatever is left over from organic matter from other industries.
Yep.
Like lawn or, wood and yeah. So this is kind of cool that all the information that you can find from satellites is kind of free.
Yep.
And you can see through the timeline.
So we've looked for correlation between things like what was going on in Japan when they had their reactor disaster, at the same time what was going on at Turkey Point in Florida. We've looked for SpaceX. Why do they pick a certain location to put a ground station? How the growth of other organizations beyond SpaceX, like OneWeb, where are they putting their satellite antennas and how many are they putting in? We've looked at Brightline building a station, building out the railroad infrastructure. We looked at pig farms. So as we were looking at the data over time, you notice that there was gaps. When we were looking at the glaciers, you could see every December they were taking another observation. Others were just spread all over the place. They had high concentrations around issues. And if they weren't looking at issues, they were spreading it out. You had some times where the satellite wanted to take a picture, but unfortunately, there was a cloud in the way. So you have bad image captures. Sometimes this can be due to whoever the operator of the satellite is. They've had it tasked to point at something else, so you just have no data for that time period. If they're trying out things, if they've got issues with the instruments, there could be transient issues like it being out of calibration or having a power fluctuation. If you're looking at things in the sky, you may want to see, hey, I'd like to look at that nebula. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any images for that night because clouds, fog, rain. Okay. I want to be able to see it other times. Well, an aircraft could go by, a satellite could go by, a planet can go by in case of looking for something deep sky. You could have a meteor shower. It could be a bright moon night, not good imaging. But the one that's also interesting is when you start looking at deep space items, for example, well, let's not say deep space. How about solar system? We know from recent history that the rovers on Mars and the landers on Mars, there was a window when we couldn't talk with them. That was because things in space move. We were on this side of the sun and Mars was on the other side of the sun. So while Mars was hiding behind the sun, we couldn't communicate with anything that was there. So if they were doing periodic observations and sending it back to Earth, there'd be a gap, a data quality gap. So don't count on everything to be 100%. There will be gaps. So in conclusion, when you're going to look for something, start by assuming that the data is already out there, already on the internet, likely publicly accessible for free. You just need to find out, who's storing it? Where can I go look? Start by looking for who the biggest purveyors of the information are. Like, you want to look at maps? Google has maps. You want to look at space stuff? NASA and the European Space Agency have space stuff. And then you start drilling down from there. What kind of data are you looking for? What repository might it be in? What kind of spacecraft or instruments took the pictures that got you the data you wanted? And then you go filter down through there. The tools that you might use would seem similar, but the way in which you use them through an interface may be a little different. But the concepts of how you mine the data are the same. What do I want to look at? Where am I observing it from? What time point or range do I want to look at? How do I get around? How do I pan, tilt, zoom, rotate, those kind of things? And then how do I lay down breadcrumbs? So when we were looking at Bangladesh and we were looking at how the shoreline was lost, you put a push pin on 1 year, and then you move forward in time, you put a push pin at the shoreline that year, and then you can sort of like in old minor planet terms, blink compare. So you can flip back and forth between them and see before, after, before, after. And then you can draw a line between the two and then measure that line. So the ability to measure things, both linear and in square area, comes into use. And then being able to save this information. If you can't save it within the application, you can do things like bring up Notepad, WordPad, copy, paste, transcribe data. But what about the image? Screen capture. So in Windows, when you're in an application and you want to capture the current screen, regardless of what's on it, you can do a, towards the upper right, there's a button that's labeled PRTSC. It's called print screen. It doesn't print the screen anymore. It just screen captures it to your clipboard. If you've got multiple applications on the display and you want to get a specific one, make that window current and then hold down, I think it's Control and then do print screen, and it will capture just that window.
Sometimes it's just print screen itself. Just push that button.
Yeah,
It'll
but
capture
if you're like me and you've got multiple displays, when you just push a raw print screen button, it's going to capture both displays in the image, which reduces the number of pixels you're looking at. So then you got to go crop out what you don't want. So if
And
you
you still have
select,
to load it into something.
yeah.
'Cause it's-
So
yeah.
so if you start by selecting just the window you want and then do a control print screen, it'll get just that window in the clipboard, which will give you more pixels and less cropping needed.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can just save it as, save it as a JPEG or a PNG, and you can call it back up. And in PowerPoint, you can actually add those images into your presentation. So enough of our perusing of data. Are there any questions, things we left out, additional information you might be interested in that we didn't look at tonight, but in the future? Well, I don't hear any snoring, so I guess there's some people still out there.
So next week we are to Everglades, to Big Cypress.
Next Saturday, we will be at Big Cypress. Don't count on it, but I'm bringing some toys that maybe we can do some live stuff from there. So even if you see me put out like a Zoom link, it may be iffy as to whether we'll be successful or not. But we'll try and do something special.
Well, we could make some videos and post on YouTube anyway.
Sure.
Yes. But it's better live,
Sure.
because sometimes at Seagrape, when the weather's really good and it's just cool enough and they've promoted it in advance and it's in the winter months, we've seen 500 people there a night.
Wow.
So we've also seen nights where there was only 30 or fewer people there. And we've
And
also
How long a drive is it?
we've also driven up when it was pouring down rain, and we assisted them in doing the presentation indoors in the auditorium of the Nature Center. Since it's a
How
2-hour,
long a drive?
it's
2
about a
hours?
2-hour drive from Fort Lauderdale. So, but we'll leave the Fort Lauderdale area. We'll take I-75 north out to Florida 29, and then take Florida 29 south to Tamiami Trail, and then turn left, come back about 5 miles, and it's right there on the right. So it's a pretty straight shot.
We take how long to get there?
Well, supposedly 2 hours,
Okay.
but for me, it's about an hour and 45 minutes.
And
Don't
go
forget
like
to bring
that.
all your stuff.
Yes,
No checklist.
and also we're going to depart here early to get down there in time to wait for Camelia's house to open, so we can have dinner at Camelia's house and then drive back over to Seagrape Drive to set up. So next week
then-
we'll be off. The following week, Helen will do Earth timeline, and then the week after that, I do a presentation, and then we're back at Big Cypress again.
And on the Earth timeline, for those who are interested in geology or So if you want me to show something special, have any ideas, contact Monroe and he will contact me. So it's like if you want me to add up a little bit, or yes, during the presentation, you can kind of, you know, do your,
questions.
you know, add up more stuff if you
Yeah.
want to show, you know. I hope my stones are here.
Maybe.
No, I think I have double stones because I have my own stones and then I got 2 of each.
Mhm.
So I think I have my set here.
Okay.
I just don't have the cropolite here.
You need to get your dinosaur shit together.
Yes, indeed. That's the scientific name for dinosaur shit, cropolite.
Yep. Fossilized dinosaur shit.
And then you want to freak out people? It looks like poop, almost like a cat's poop. And
Yes.
then to show them that it's stone, I go and hit in my teeth, and they go like, ew.
Yeah. But one of them is very good. It has a lot of detail in it. You can actually see the peristaltic action as the poop is coming.
It's like the kids go put the hand and then to hold the poop, and they find it awesome. And then when the mother comes and see what is it, and like, oh, and then she kind of, you know, bump the hand of the kid to give to me back, like, oh, don't touch it, don't touch his poop. I'm like, 16 years old poop.
They'll never become astronauts and drink yesterday's coffee today.
Yes, exactly.
Don't astronauts, they drink that orange juice.
Tang.
Dang.
Yeah. There you
No,
go.
there's a joke that if you are on board the International Space Station and you're drinking coffee,
Today's coffee is
today's
tomorrow's
coffee
coffee.
was yesterday's coffee.
Or, no, it's tomorrow's coffee.
Tomorrow's coffee is today's.
No, today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee.
Yes.
Right.
I used to make coffee for my group, and they said, it tastes like dirt. I said, well, it was ground this morning.
No, it's fresh ground. It was fresh ground this morning. I know. So along the lines of nonsense, guess what premiered this week?
Oh, Space Force! I already binged watch.
Yes, season 2 of Space Force on Netflix premiered this week, and I've already binge watched all 7 episodes.
I did the same.
They're only 30 minutes a pop, so they go pretty quickly. But the first episode's kind of slow, and it gets better.
Yes, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna do? It's like The Witcher, I binge watched already. Space Force, I binge watched in one day. I'm like, oh.
Okay. I binge watched Ozark. That's just a story of how much can you torture these poor people? And as they get towards the end of the series, they're whacking more of the people that you go, oh, you killed that one off. What are you going to do? Well, we're getting near the end. You haven't seen the end yet. So I suspect that by the end of Ozark on Netflix, they're going to kill everyone off.
Oh, I didn't watch that one yet. Never got interested. And I'm waiting for Ragnarok because it's so good.
I don't know. Another one that I've started watching on Netflix is Making Anna. Just because I like particular actors that are into it.
Nah.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
I don't like it. I don't like.
I like they
watch
say.
it.
How did they say it? That this is a
One in every corner.
yeah. This program is based upon a true story, except for the parts that aren't.
Sure.
It's kind of like how Anna herself was. Everything about her was true, except the parts that aren't.
What else is good to watch on Netflix? And I watch everything that has UFO on Netflix. Like even chapters of other programs that talk about UFO, I watch the whole thing.
Oh,
And then-
speaking of that one, there was a new observation that was reviewed by Chris Lito. So this week he released another video of him analyzing.
The ex-pilot?
The ex-pilot, yeah. He released another one this week. It was an F-18. It was off of the Virginia coastline. I think it was in 2019. And they were the pilot in the second seat, in the rear seat, was smart enough that he realized that if he used the instruments on board the aircraft to capture the information, that his commanding officer can order the information surrendered. But if he whipped out his iPhone and started taking pictures of the UAPs, yeah.
Okay.
So much for Neil deGrasse Tyson's. Don't they ever use good cameras? Unfortunately, it was an iPhone 8.
Oh,
Swamp
So
gas.
it's not bad, but the FLIR video where you saw the object look kind of like a very fuzzy, sparkly cross, this is that same object shot a couple of years later. And now you have a color camera, and he snapped as many pictures as he could as the UFO was going down the long side of the aircraft. So it's like snap, snap, snap. And because of that, and the known field of view of the camera and the pixel size, he could actually estimate the approximate size of the object. And you can start to see structure on the outside of the Tic Tac.
so how did they call that video so I can see it?
Let's see here. I just know it's on Chris Lato's channel. So if you go to YouTube and you look up Chris Lato and you go to his channel and you look at the latest video, I'll bring it up and I'll put it in the chat window if I find it.
Chris Lato, YouTube.
You want his channel, not a video. There it is. Sphere Acorn Blimp,
Oh, it's 2 T's. I put with 1 E.
LEHTO. That's his latest. If you're looking for it by name, it's Sphere Acorn Blimp. That's Chris Lato's video. The thing to think about here is if it really is just over 6 feet in size, it's not
tiny.
going to be manned. But also, if you look at the latest high performance drones that the Navy has been playing with, they're about 6 feet. The ones that land on aircraft carriers, they're small. So if you take the electrostatic propulsion of Undefined Technologies and you take the drone technology from the Navy for their UAVs and you put them together, you get that thing. Maybe, who knows? Anything.
I'm looking at his page. He has lots of videos.
Well, he puts a new one out every Friday.
16,000 subscribers.
Yes. Well, I like the fact that he gets as much data in as he can before he does his analysis. And in his analysis, he does time, distance, speed, sun angles.
Really good.
He's very good at it. When he was describing the 72 area, that's a military cordoned off area. So private pilots are not allowed to fly in there because, as he was saying, we're allowed to do sonic booms. We're allowed to, fire off chaff and flares. And my guess is they're also allowed to target drones with missiles and guns in
He
that
started
area.
his page about a year ago.
Yes. So all I can say is, if he's one of the military's guys that are designed to slowly bring us out to current information, he's very popular at it.
So did he say that there have been repeated sightings of these things
Yes.
in that area?
Yes.
Yes.
So do
Yeah.
you think there are satellites tasked to look for them?
There are, but how would you find them? You would have to find a commercial satellite offerer. that would allow you to look in there on 2019.
Yeah, us, yes.
Yeah.
So the basic for a half a year or so, he was just talking about economics and starting doing like the videos very amateuristic.
Yes.
And then when the Pentagon videos went on the, maybe it was the time that they went to the program on CBS.
He was already
Remember,
he was already retired. He was no, it was before 60 Minutes. He was already retired by then. It was
yeah,
when the
but
Freedom
he
of
only
Information
started
Act was released.
talking about UAPs
Yeah.
about 8 months ago. That's
Yeah.
his first video about UAPs is 8 months ago.
But I think the reason why he's doing what he's doing is when people say, "Oh, but that's not a skilled observer," or
Or this one
he's not a very rational-minded person. Okay, this guy is a career-based F-16 fighter. F-15
he
fighter
is
pilot.
a career
Yeah,
scientific minded.
and when
It's
he
a
talks,
cookbook.
yes, when he talks about when he draws the little charts where he shows the distance, rates, and the curves and the
We just
angles, and
subscribed.
he's got a lot of experience of post-mission analysis.
I've just subscribed. He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
His calculations are like, whoa,
Yeah,
very detailed.
but I'm sure Neil deGrasse Tyson would say that last shot where you can actually see structure on it, well, that's out of focus. It's fuzzy. Is this the best you can do? The guy was traveling at a good portion of the speed of sound, and he was shooting shots with his iPhone up to the window of the cockpit. Yeah.
iPhone 8. It actually was pretty good for what it was, held by hand.
Yep.
But also he was off Virginia, right? Is that what he said?
Yes, he was in a military zone.
Right. It was full of swamp gas, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. Whenever they launch a weather balloon or any kind of balloon to which you attach instruments, there's an FAA requirement for you to file a flight plan for it so that you don't do something stupid and launch your helium balloon near an airport.
Or near a military base.
Yes, or near a military quadrant off zone.
Yeah. And then the picture was too steady to be a balloon. A balloon would be, like rolling in. No, it was like just steady height. And, you could see that they kept the same position and the pilot was moving.
Did you see the annotation in the video where they were talking about it not being balloon because it was stationary? And then you see the little white text show up and say, object was stationary in 40 knot wind. That's not a balloon.
No.
I'm thinking it's a Air Force UAV, unmanned aerial drone.
Those, if they are from Earth, they have technology that could save the planet they are hiding. And if it's somewhere else, we have visitors. Hi, visitors.
Yes.
I won't say smack about you.
It's on a you don't need to know basis. At least not now, maybe later.
Yep. But you can actually see it building up. 10 years ago, if you say something like that, you're crazy.
Yes.
3 years ago, people started, what?
It's the
And now
slow
it's
release.
like more and more information coming out. It feels like they're preparing for something big.
It's the slow release, and it's the gradual removal of the duct blind.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
That's what it seems.
okay, I see
48 minutes.
I see by
48
Mickey
minutes.
Mouse, we're 48 minutes past our pumpkin time.
Okay. Any more ideas for presentations in the future?
Just shoot an email.
All right.
All right, then. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks.